casting an intimate glow over the well-ordered space. The room was a reflection of its inhabitant, elegant, understated, and meticulously maintained. Elizabeth, a single mother in her early 40s, had always taken pride in her home and her personal style, both of which spoke to a life lived with grace and a quiet sense of sophistication. As she prepared for her evening out, Elizabeth moved with a confident ease, her every motion a testament to the comfort she found within her private sanctuary. She had chosen her outfit with care, a classic little black dress that she had purchased during a rare weekend getaway with her girlfriends, a time when she could shed the responsibilities of parenthood, if only for a moment. Reaching into the depths of her wardrobe, her hand brushed against the soft fabric of the dress. But as she pulled it toward her, her fingers encountered something else. A small, buzzing toy hidden in the back of the closet. It was her toy, a discreet companion that had offered solace during the lonely nights that stretched between the demands of work and motherhood. A gasp escaped her lips as the object vibrated gently against her fingertips, and she quickly tucked it back into its hiding place, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't heard Lucas come home, and the thought of him finding her secret pleasure so exposed filled her with a mixture of embarrassment and alarm. But it was too late. Lucas had already witnessed the scene, his eyes wide with surprise and confusion as he struggled to process what he had just seen. The color drained from Elizabeth's face as she realized the full extent of the situation. Lucas, her 18-year-old son, stood in the doorway, the evidence of his mother's private life laid bare before him. The prolonged black, still buzzing softly in its hiding spot, seemed to mock her with its incessant hum. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Elizabeth's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of panic and confusion. How much had he seen? What must he be thinking? The toy, which she had all but forgotten in the chaos of daily life, was now a tangible symbol of her personal desires, a secret aspect of her life that she had never intended to share with her son. Lucas, for his part, was equally flustered. His gaze flickered between his mother and the wardrobe, his adolescent brain struggling to reconcile the image of the big black thing with the woman who had been the very picture of maternal reserve his entire life. "Mom, I didn't mean to," Lucas stammered, his voice tinged with awkwardness. Elizabeth nodded, her heart aching with the weight of the moment. She knew that a conversation about boundaries and privacy was necessary, but the timing couldn't have been worse. She was already running late for her date, and the last thing she wanted was to leave things unresolved between them. "Lucas, we need to talk about this, but I have to go out in a few minutes," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. "Can we sit down together later tonight, after I get back?" "Yeah, sure, Mom," Lucas replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll be up." With that, he turned on his heel and retreated from the room, leaving Elizabeth to gather her composure. She hurriedly finished getting ready, the encounter with Lucas serving as a stark reminder of the delicate balance she maintained between her identity as a mother and her life as an independent woman. As she slipped into her little black dress and applied a final touch of lipstick, Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder how this new development would affect her relationship with her son. Her toy, a symbol of her personal freedom and sexuality, had unwittingly breached the walls she had so carefully constructed between her private life and her role as a parent. The evening ahead, which had promised a welcome respite from her daily responsibilities, now loomed with newfound complexity. Elizabeth knew that the conversation with Lucas wouldn't be easy, but she also recognized the importance of addressing the issue with honesty and sensitivity. With a final glance in the mirror, Elizabeth steeled herself for the night ahead. She would enjoy her date, savoring the brief return to a life less encumbered, but the image of Lucas's startled expression lingered in the back of her mind, a silent reminder of the challenges that awaited her upon her return. As she stepped out of the house, the cool evening air enveloped her, a whisper of change that seemed to echo the shifting dynamics within her own home. Elizabeth took a deep breath, resolved to face whatever came next with the same courage and grace that had carried her through the trials and tribulations of motherhood thus far. The night was still young, and the future, with all its uncertainties, stretched out before her. a canvas waiting to be painted with the colors of life's myriad experiences. With each step she took, Elizabeth embraced the duality of her existence, holding space for both the vulnerability of her recent exposure and the strength that had always defined her as a woman and as a mother. Tonight's discovery had changed things, that much was certain. But as Elizabeth closed the door behind her, she did so with the unshakable belief that she and Lucas would find their way through this unexpected chapter in their lives, together. In the wake of the unexpected discovery, Elizabeth found herself in the midst of a profound inner transformation. The revelation of her toy had inadvertently cast a spotlight on aspects of her identity that she had long neglected. Her femininity, her sexuality, her desire to feel attractive and alive. She caught herself lingering a little longer in front of the mirror, her eyes tracing the contours of her body with a newfound appreciation. The curve of her hips, once simply a part of her, now seemed to be a testament to her womanhood. The soft swell of her breasts, often concealed beneath modest clothing, suddenly beckoned to be adorned and admired. Elizabeth felt a stirring of something deep within her, a yearning to reclaim the sensuality that had been dormant for so long. She began to explore her wardrobe with fresh eyes, selecting pieces that she had previously deemed too bold or too revealing for her day-to-day life as a mother. One morning, she found herself pairing a form-fitting top with a skirt that hugged her curves in a way that made her feel daring and desirable. On another occasion, she donned a silk camisole that whispered against her skin, its delicate fabric hinting at the secrets it concealed. With each new outfit, Elizabeth felt a piece of her old self, the self that had been submerged beneath the responsibilities of parenthood, begin to re-emerge. As she moved through the house, she was acutely aware of Lucas's presence. She noticed the way his gaze would occasionally follow her, the subtle shift in his demeanor when she entered the room. There was a new dynamic at play, an unspoken tension that seemed to hum in the space between them. Lucas, too, was grappling with the changes he observed in his mother, the confidence with which she carried herself, the alluring outfits that accentuated her feminine form. These were things he had never seen before, at least not to this extent. He found himself caught off guard by his own reactions, by the warmth that crept into his cheeks whenever his eyes inadvertently met hers. The air in the room seemed to thicken whenever they were together, charged with electricity that neither of them could fully explain or ignore. Elizabeth recognized the flush of color in Lucas's cheeks, the slight hesitation in his voice when he spoke to her, signs that he too was affected by the shift in their relationship. Despite the discomfort that sometimes accompanied these newfound feelings, Elizabeth also felt a glimmer of excitement. There was something thrilling about being seen as a woman, not just as Lucas's mother. She reveled in the subtle interplay of glances and smiles, the playful banter that had begun to creep into their conversations. Lucas, for all his initial confusion, found himself drawn to this more vibrant, self-assured version of Elizabeth. He admired her courage in embracing her desires and her willingness to challenge the boundaries of their relationship. In the quiet of his own thoughts, he acknowledged a grudging respect for the complex and multifaceted woman she was revealing herself to be. Yet, even as they both delighted in the new layers of their connection, they understood that they were treading on uncertain ground. The discovery of Elizabeth's toy had blurred the lines between parent and child, forcing them to confront the reality of their shared existence in a way that was both exhilarating and fraught with peril. Elizabeth knew that they would need to address the unspoken undercurrents that now colored their interactions. She was determined to maintain a sense of decorum and respect, even as she allowed herself to explore the more vibrant aspects of her personality. The challenge would be to navigate this uncharted territory with grace and sensitivity, ensuring that the bond between her and Lucas remained strong and healthy. As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth and Lucas settled into a cautious acceptance of their new normal. They were learning to balance the tension of their evolving relationship with the love and respect that had always been at its core. And though the path forward was sure to be filled with challenges, they faced it together, each step a testament to their resilience and the enduring power of their connection. The atmosphere in the house had grown heavy with the weight of unspoken words and the lingering afterimage of the toy's discovery. Elizabeth and Lucas moved through their shared spaces with a heightened sense of awareness, each moment charged with the potential for awkwardness or unexpected revelation. The tension had become a palpable presence, an invisible third party that seemed to witness their every interaction with an unnerving silence. Lucas, whose adolescent world had been upended by the glimpse into his mother's private life, found himself oscillating between embarrassment and curiosity. The image of the toy, coupled with the newfound knowledge of his mother's desires, had taken up residence in his mind, provoking a whirlwind of emotions that he struggled to comprehend. As the days passed, Lucas's internal conflict reached a tipping point. He realized that avoiding the issue would only perpetuate the discomfort that had settled over their home. With a deep breath and a resolve that belied his years, he decided it was time to confront the elephant in the room. "Mom," Lucas began one evening, his voice slightly unsteady as they sat across from each other at the kitchen table. "About the other day, I didn't mean to pry." Elizabeth's heart skipped a beat, the familiar flush of embarrassment creeping across her cheeks. She had known this conversation was inevitable, yet she still felt unprepared for the vulnerability it demanded. She met her son's gaze, her eyes communicating a mix of apprehension and determination. "I know, Lucas," she replied gently. "It's not something I intended for you to find. But we need to talk about it. We can't just pretend it never happened." As they delved into the conversation, Elizabeth was surprised by the ease with which they began to navigate the sensitive topic. Lucas listened intently as she explained the importance of personal exploration and the need for privacy in matters of intimacy. She spoke with honesty and care, choosing her words in a way that respected Lucas's maturity while still maintaining the appropriate boundaries between them. Despite the open dialogue, Elizabeth couldn't ignore the physical reactions she observed in Lucas. His eyes, which had always been so open and guileless, now darted away whenever their gazes met. His posture, usually relaxed in her presence, was tense, and she noticed a change in the way he sat, an attempt to subtly adjust his position and conceal the evidence of his arousal. The realization that their conversation was having such a visceral effect on Lucas was both startling and disconcerting. Elizabeth felt a rush of maternal concern, coupled with a twinge of discomfort at the thought of her son experiencing arousal in her presence. It was a stark reminder of the delicate tightrope they were walking, balancing the roles of mother and son with the complex realities of human desire. Elizabeth took a moment to steady her nerves, reminding herself that the situation required sensitivity and understanding, not judgment or shame. She acknowledged the awkwardness of the moment, addressing it directly to diffuse the tension. "Lucas, it's okay to feel confused about all of this," she said softly. "What you're feeling is normal, but it's important that we handle these emotions responsibly. Our relationship is based on trust and respect, and we need to preserve that no matter what." Lucas nodded, the color in his cheeks deepening as he grappled with the dual reality of his physical response and the gravity of their conversation. He appreciated his mother's forthrightness and the compassionate tone with which she addressed such an intimate topic. As the conversation drew to a close, both Elizabeth and Lucas felt a sense of relief. They had navigated a difficult and potentially destructive scenario with grace and dignity, emerging with a deeper understanding of each other and the complexities of human sexuality. The boundaries between them had been reaffirmed, providing a clear framework for moving forward. They had learned valuable lessons about communication, empathy, and the importance of addressing uncomfortable truths with honesty and care. While the conversation had brought certain physical realities to light, Elizabeth and Lucas chose to focus on the emotional growth that had resulted from their frank discussion. They were committed to maintaining a relationship built on mutual respect and a shared desire to understand and support one another, even as they continued to face the challenges that lay ahead. The house was silent in the wake of Lucas's departure to his room, the echoes of their earlier conversation lingering in the air like the aftermath of a summer storm. Elizabeth sat alone at the kitchen table, the stem of a wine glass twirling absent-mindedly between her fingers. The ruby liquid within captured the soft light of the room, casting a warm glow that seemed at odds with the tumultuous thoughts swirling in her mind. As she sipped her wine, Elizabeth found herself adrift in a sea of memories, each one a vivid recollection of the evenings she had spent in solitude, her body awash with the pleasures brought forth by her toy. She remembered the soft, insistent hum of the device, the exquisite sensation of release as she surrendered to waves of ecstasy, and the profound sense of contentment that followed in the aftermath of her indulgence. These private moments of pleasure, once a closely guarded secret, had been inexplicably intertwined with her relationship with Lucas. The knowledge that her son had unwittingly become a witness to this aspect of her life filled her with a complex mix of shame and arousal, a forbidden blend of emotions that both unsettled and intrigued her. As Elizabeth replayed the conversation in her mind, she couldn't ignore the physical response she had observed in Lucas. The subtle signs of his arousal, the way his body had instinctively reacted to the intimate nature of their discussion, stirred something deep within her. It was a reminder that despite the maternal bond they shared, they were both complex individuals with their own internal desires and struggles. The realization that their mother-son dynamic had become colored by an undercurrent of mutual attraction was a jarring one. Elizabeth grappled with the inappropriateness of such feelings, her mind racing with questions that challenged the very foundation of their relationship. Was it normal to experience this level of awareness towards one another? How could she reconcile the love she felt for her son with the illicit thrill that his physical response had ignited within her? Elizabeth knew that these thoughts were turbulent waters to tread, fraught with the potential for emotional and ethical conflict. She was acutely aware of the delicate balance she must maintain, acknowledging the reality of their shared experience while also enforcing the boundaries that were essential to preserving the integrity of their family bond. As the evening wore on, Elizabeth allowed herself to explore the contours of her inner conflict. She recognized that the path forward would not be an easy one. It would require a delicate dance of restraint and openness, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths without allowing them to undermine the love and respect that had always defined their relationship. With each passing moment, Elizabeth gained a clearer sense of the direction she needed to take. She resolved to approach her role as a mother with even greater intention, to provide Lucas with the guidance and understanding he would need to navigate his own burgeoning sexuality. At the same time, she committed to honoring her own needs and desires, to finding a way to express her womanhood in a manner that was both fulfilling and appropriate. As she drained the last of her wine and prepared to retire for the night, Elizabeth felt a sense of quiet determination settling over her. The challenges ahead were significant, but she was no stranger to the trials of life. She would face them head-on, with the same courage and grace that had carried her through every other storm she had encountered on her journey as a mother and as a woman. In the solitude of her room, Elizabeth allowed herself one final indulgence, the luxury of surrendering to the comforting embrace of sleep. As she closed her eyes and let the worries of the day slip away, she did so with the knowledge that tomorrow would be a new day, a day filled with opportunity and the promise of continued growth for both her and Lucas. As the days unfurled like the petals of a blooming flower, the dynamic between Elizabeth and Lucas underwent a subtle yet profound metamorphosis. The initial embarrassment of the toy's discovery had given way to a simmering undercurrent of attraction that neither could deny. Their home, once a bastion of maternal oversight, was now tinged with an electric charge that infused their day-to-day lives with an exhilarating sense of possibility. Elizabeth found herself drawn to the magnetic allure of her son's youthful vitality. When she wore her favorite sundress, a garment that clung to her curves in all the right places, she noticed the way Lucas's gaze would hungrily trace the contours of her body. The knowledge that she could elicit such a reaction in him was both thrilling and intoxicating, igniting a fire within her that she had long thought extinguished. Their interactions became laced with a playful sensuality that was both deliberate and provocative. Elizabeth would brush against Lucas more often than necessary, her body responding to the heat that seemed to radiate from his skin. She reveled in the sharp intake of his breath, the subtle hitch in his step whenever their bodies made contact, each reaction fueling her desire to explore the boundaries of their connection. Lucas, too, found himself caught in the thrall of his mother's allure. The soft curves of her figure, the tantalizing glimpses of her cleavage, the subtle sway of her hips as she moved about the house, all of it conspired to stoke the flames of his adolescent yearning. He responded to her teasing with a boldness that surprised them both. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that spoke of unspoken promises and forbidden fantasies. Their laughter and shared jokes were now underscored by a sultry undercurrent, their conversations filled with innuendo and double entendres that left them both flushed with anticipation. They engaged in a delicate dance of temptation and restraint, each touch, each lingering look a silent negotiation of the desires that pulsed just beneath the surface. In the quiet of the evening, when the rest of the world seemed to fall away, Elizabeth and Lucas would find themselves alone in the dimly lit living room, the air thick with the promise of what might come. They sat close enough that their legs would occasionally graze against one another, each point of contact sending shivers of excitement coursing through their veins. Elizabeth could feel the heat of Lucas's body, could sense the rapid beat of his heart as she leaned in to whisper a joke or a teasing remark. She delighted in the way his eyes would darken with desire, the way his breathing would become shallow and ragged as the space between them grew charged with an undeniable sexual tension. Lucas, for his part, was intoxicated by the scent of his mother's perfume, the softness of her skin when their hands would accidentally touch. He found himself captivated by the fullness of her lips, the way they glistened in the muted light as she spoke or laughed. The image of them seared into his memory as a symbol of everything he yearned to explore but dared not reach for. Yet, despite the heat of their interactions, both Elizabeth and Lucas were acutely aware of the need to tread carefully. They were playing a dangerous game, one that could potentially unravel the fabric of their family if they allowed their desires to override their better judgment. They were determined to honor the love and respect that had always anchored their relationship, even as they navigated the intoxicating pull of their mutual attraction. Their dance of desire was a delicate ballet, a choreography of yearning and restraint that brought them to the very edge of what was permissible. It was a testament to their strength as individuals and as a mother-son unit that they never crossed the line into forbidden territory, choosing instead to celebrate the intensity of their connection in a way that was both exhilarating and deeply respectful of the boundaries that defined their relationship. In this new chapter of their lives, Elizabeth and Lucas discovered a shared joy in the play of seduction without succumbing to its most dangerous temptations. They learned to bask in the heat of their attraction while maintaining the integrity of their familial bond, creating a space where desire and responsibility could coexist in harmonious balance. As the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, casting a warm, golden hue over the world outside, Elizabeth and Lucas found themselves drawn into the private realm of their shared home. The playful energy that crackled between them had become a familiar presence, a tantalizing reminder of the undeniable chemistry that had transformed their relationship. Yet, for all the heat and intensity of their connection, they both recognized the need to establish clear boundaries that would preserve the sanctity of their familial bond. They began to engage in open and honest dialogues about the nature of their interactions, delving into the complexities of desire and the imperative of respecting the limits of their mother-son dynamic. Elizabeth, with the wisdom of her years and the clarity of her maternal role, initiated these conversations, guiding them with a firm yet gentle hand. "Lucas," she began one evening, her voice steady and calm, "we need to talk about what's happening between us. There's no denying that there's something special about the way we connect, but we have to be careful not to let our emotions run away with us." Lucas listened intently, his eyes reflecting a mix of adolescent longing and a growing maturity that spoke of his willingness to understand and abide by the boundaries his mother was setting. "I know, Mom. I feel it too. But I don't want to mess up what we have. I want to make sure we're both comfortable with where this is going." Together, they mapped out the contours of what was acceptable within the confines of their relationship. they agreed that while it was natural to feel attracted to one another, certain behaviors were strictly off-limits. They vowed to respect each other's privacy, to cherish the trust that had been the cornerstone of their relationship from the very beginning. In the quiet hours of the night, when the house was wrapped in the velvety embrace of darkness, Elizabeth would retreat to the sanctuary of her bedroom. There, alone with her thoughts and the soft hum of her toy, she allowed her mind to wander to the object of her desire, her own son. The forbidden nature of her fantasies added an edge of excitement to her solitary pleasure, each wave of ecstasy a testament to the depth of her longing and the unspoken bond they shared. Lucas, in the solitude of his own room, grappled with the complexity of his emotions. He was acutely aware of the line that separated fantasy from reality, and he was determined to honor the commitment he had made to his mother. He channeled his energy into his studies and hobbies, taking comfort in the knowledge that Elizabeth valued their relationship above all else. Despite the intensity of their attraction, Elizabeth and Lucas found a way to navigate their new reality with a sense of purpose and restraint. They cherished the closeness of their relationship, the easy camaraderie that had become a hallmark of their interactions, and they were both fiercely protective of the love that united them as mother and son. Their agreement to maintain the integrity of their relationship meant that their interactions during the day were characterized by a warm and affectionate rapport, devoid of any overt sexual undertones. They laughed and joked, shared meals and stories, and supported one another through life's ups and downs, all while maintaining a respectful distance that acknowledged the complexities of their connection. In this way, Elizabeth and Lucas managed to strike a delicate balance between the recognition of their mutual attraction and the imperative to uphold the values that had always defined their family. They had ventured into uncharted waters, braving the storm of their desires without losing sight of the respect and love that anchored their relationship. As they continued to explore the boundaries of their connection, they did so with a shared understanding that their bond was rooted in something far deeper than the fleeting thrill of sexual tension. It was a bond that had been forged in the fires of honesty, trust, and an unwavering commitment to one another's well-being. A bond that would sustain them through whatever challenges the future might hold. The night was like any other, with the soft glow of the television casting flickering shadows across the living room. Elizabeth and Lucas had settled into their usual spots on the couch, a bowl of popcorn between them as they lost themselves in the world unfolding on the screen. It was a scene of domestic tranquility, a snapshot of the ordinary life they had always known. As the movie progressed, Elizabeth felt a familiar sense of comfort in Lucas's presence. The stresses of the day melted away as she allowed herself to relax into the cushions, her body sinking into the soft fabric with a sigh of contentment. Without realizing it, she shifted her position, her head coming to rest on Lucas's thigh, a casual, intimate gesture that had become a part of their evening routine. The warmth of Elizabeth's breath against his skin was a subtle reminder of the delicate balance they had so carefully constructed. Lucas felt a jolt of electricity course through him as she settled against him, the line between appropriate affection and forbidden desire blurring in an instant. He tried to focus on the movie, to ignore the growing firmness that betrayed his body's instinctive reaction to her closeness. Elizabeth, for her part, was only half aware of the intimacy of her gesture until she felt the unmistakable firmness beneath her. A rush of heat flooded her body as the reality of the situation sank in. The barriers between them, so meticulously erected and vigilantly maintained, seemed to dissolve in the face of their undeniable physical connection. In that moment, caught in the throes of an attraction that was both exhilarating and terrifying, Elizabeth acted on impulse. She tilted her face upward, her eyes locking onto Lucas's in a silent exchange of desire and hesitation. And then, with a boldness that belied the gravity of their transgression, she closed the distance between them, her lips meeting Lucas's in a kiss that was both tender and charged with the pent-up energy of their mutual longing. The kiss was brief, a fleeting brush of lips that was over almost as soon as it began. But its impact reverberated through the very core of their beings. a seismic shift that threatened to alter the landscape of their relationship forever. As Elizabeth pulled away, her heart pounding in her chest, she was acutely aware of the line they had just crossed. The room was silent save for the muffled sounds of the movie playing out its final scenes, the tension between them palpable in the stillness of the night. Lucas, his mind reeling from the shock of the kiss, struggled to process the enormity of what had just occurred. He looked at Elizabeth, his eyes searching hers for some indication of what would come next. The connection they shared in that moment was undeniable, a raw and vulnerable exposure of their deepest desires. But alongside the heat of their attraction was a sobering recognition of the potential consequences of their actions. They were treading on dangerous ground, venturing into a realm that could irrevocably alter the love and trust that had always been the bedrock of their relationship. The silence that enveloped them was a testament to the complexity of their situation, a silence that spoke of unspoken fears, unbridled passions, and the unbreakable bond that united them as mother and son. It was a silence that demanded to be broken, for words to be spoken that would either mend the fracture that had appeared in their world or widen it into an unbridgeable chasm. Elizabeth was the first to find her voice, her words measured and fraught with the weight of their shared transgression. "Lucas, we can't. This can't happen again. What we have is too important to risk over a moment of weakness." Lucas nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just got caught up in the moment." They sat there for a while longer, the distance between them a physical manifestation of the boundaries they had momentarily forgotten. The evening had taken an unexpected turn, a detour into uncharted territory that left them both shaken and introspective. As Elizabeth rose from the couch, her movements deliberate and composed, she knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. They would need to reaffirm their commitment to one another and to the principles that had always guided their relationship. They would need to rebuild the trust that had been tested by the heat of their desire. And so, with a heavy heart and a clear resolve, Elizabeth bid Lucas good night and retreated to the solitude of her room. As she closed the door behind her, she did so with the knowledge that the journey forward would require strength, honesty, and an unwavering dedication to the values that had always defined her as a mother and as a woman. In the quiet stillness of the night, Elizabeth allowed herself to confront the full spectrum of her emotions. She mourned the loss of innocence that had been stripped away by the events of the evening, even as she acknowledged the fierce determination that burned within her. A determination to protect the bond she shared with her son at all costs. With the echo of their kiss still lingering on their lips, Elizabeth and Lucas found themselves at a crossroads that neither had anticipated. The line between right and wrong had blurred, leaving them in a state of heightened awareness where only the pull of their connection seemed to matter. The gravity of their transgression was not lost on them, yet the intensity of their emotions propelled them forward, into the uncharted territory of their desires. In the quiet of the night, Elizabeth made her way to Lucas's bedroom, each step a deliberate defiance of the boundaries they had long upheld. As she entered, the air around them seemed to crackle with an electricity that was both exhilarating and terrifying. They were about to cross a threshold from which there would be no easy return, and yet, in that moment, there was nowhere else they would rather be. They began to undress one another with a reverence that bordered on worship. Elizabeth's hands gently pulled at the hem of Lucas's shirt, her eyes drinking in the sight of his body as it was revealed to her, the toned planes of his chest, the taut muscles of his stomach, the way his breathing quickened under her touch. Lucas, in turn, was captivated by the graceful curves of his mother's figure, his hands trembling slightly as he unhooked her bra, releasing the soft fullness of her breasts. As their clothes fell away, they stood before each other, vulnerable and exposed, yet more connected than they had ever been. Elizabeth marveled at the contours of Ethan's body, the strength in his hands as they traced the lines of her form, each touch sending waves of pleasure coursing through her veins. Lucas was equally entranced, his gaze wandering over the beauty of his mother's nakedness, a sight he had never imagined he would see. They came together on the bed in a tangle of limbs and whispered words, their bodies moving in a delicate dance of discovery and unspoken emotions. The world outside ceased to exist as they explored each other with a tenderness and intensity that left them both breathless. Elizabeth reveled in the sensation of Lucas's skin against her own, the warmth of his embrace, the urgency of his kisses as they mapped a path from her lips down the length of her body. Their lovemaking was a symphony of sensation, each touch, each caress, a note in the melody they were creating together. They were united not just in body but in spirit, their union a profound expression of the love and desire that had grown between them in secret. They moved together in perfect harmony, their bodies intuitively attuned to the rhythms of their shared passion. As they reached the pinnacle of their pleasure, it was as though time itself stood still. The world outside faded into insignificance, leaving only the two of them, a mother and her son, joined in an act of love that transcended the boundaries of their familial roles. They clung to each other as they rode the waves of their ecstasy, their cries of passion mingling in the stillness of the night. In the aftermath, as they lay spent in each other's arms, they were acutely aware that their relationship had been irrevocably altered. The barriers that had once defined their connection had been shattered, leaving them to navigate the complexities of their new reality. They had ventured into the realm of the forbidden and had emerged transformed, bound together by an experience that was both beautiful and fraught with consequence. As Elizabeth eventually extracted herself from Lucas's embrace and returned to her own room, she did so with the knowledge that the path ahead would be laden with challenges. They would need to confront the implications of their actions, to find a way to reconcile the love they felt for one another with the societal norms they had so defiantly cast aside. But for now, in the quiet hours before dawn, they each surrendered to the sanctuary of their own thoughts, the memory of their shared passion a bittersweet reminder of the risks they had taken and the love that had led them down this uncharted path. In the wake of their shared intimacy, Elizabeth and Lucas lay entwined, the steady rhythm of their hearts beating in sync as they navigated the emotional landscape that stretched out before them. The sheets, tangled from their passionate embrace, provided a meager barrier against the coolness of the night air, but the warmth that radiated between their bodies was more than enough to stave off the chill. As they basked in the afterglow of their lovemaking, the reality of what they had done began to settle over them. They had ventured into uncharted territory, crossing a threshold that had irrevocably altered the contours of their relationship. The knowledge of their transgression hung in the air, a silent witness to the profound shift that had taken place within the walls of their shared home. Yet, in the quiet of the post-coital haze, the complications that awaited them seemed distant and inconsequential. The outside world, with its rigid moral codes and disapproving whispers, could not penetrate the sanctuary they had created in the intimacy of Lucas's bedroom. In this sacred space, they were not bound by the roles of mother and son. They were simply Elizabeth and Lucas, two souls united by a love that transcended the conventional boundaries of their familial connection. They knew that the path they had chosen was strewn with obstacles, that the decisions they had made in the heat of their desire would have repercussions that would ripple through every aspect of their lives. But as they lay there, with the soft glow of the moon casting a gentle light over their intertwined bodies, the weight of the future seemed a small price to pay for the beauty of the moment they were sharing. In the solitude of their embrace, they spoke in hushed tones of their hopes and fears, their whispered conversations interspersed with moments of silence that were filled with the unspoken language of their shared understanding. They talked of love,